Everyone thought it was just a popcorn cart. But when the K9 wouldn't move, what they pulled from underneath made the entire block freeze. So why was it placed right there outside the cinema? Here comes the full story, but real quick, drop how old is your dog in the comments and make sure you're subscribed. Friday nights at Riverfield Plaza always followed a pattern. Flooded sidewalks, the thick scent of buttered popcorn wafting into the streets, families trickling into the cinema beneath glowing marquees. It was the safest part of town. Nothing unusual ever happened outside the Riverfield Cinema, just ticket stubs, soda spills, and late-night laughs. That was why Officer Mason Kepler had almost called it a night early. He had pulled patrol duty around the plaza with K9 Unit Rex, a 5-year-old German Shepherd with a calm demeanor and exceptional nose. Rex wasn't one to make noise unless something really set him off. He didn't overreact. He didn't chase smells without meaning. So when Rex suddenly froze near the cinema's main entrance and wouldn't budge, Mason knew something was wrong. It was 8:57 p.m. Families were still stepping into the final movie showing. The ticket line was almost done, but Rex stood like a statue, gaze fixed on something near the concession carts stationed at the plaza's outer circle. One cart in particular, a red and yellow popcorn cart. Same vendor every week, same scent in the air. Harmless, until Rex growled. Mason followed his partner's stare. The popcorn vendor had a name, Charlie, a well-known figure around the cinema. Cheerful, mid-50s, always wearing a faded cap and smelling of grease and sugar. But tonight, the man behind the cart wasn't Charlie. Younger, early 30s maybe. Thin, cap pulled low, hoodie underneath the vendor apron. Rex took a step forward, snout low, tail high and still. Mason tightened the leash. Easy. But the dog wouldn't ease. He advanced again, pulling with insistence. The vendor noticed and gave a casual wave. Even in officer. Mason nodded. Charlie off tonight? The man smiled. Yeah, he called in. I'm just filling in. But his hands never left the cart, and his eyes never fully met Mason's. Rex let out a sharp bark, short and direct, the kind that meant alert. Mason signaled for backup and casually began to walk Rex around the perimeter of the cart. Rex didn't sniff the popcorn bin, didn't even look at the counter. He was focused on the base, specifically the steel lockbox used to weigh the cart down. And when they passed it, Rex sat. Straight, still. That was his strongest alert. Mason glanced down. The vendor hadn't moved, just smiled. Tighter this time. Something wrong, he asked. Routine, Mason replied. Dogs doing a sweep. Another officer arrived. Sergeant Coleman, calm, measured. Mason signaled with a hand tap, K9 alert, possible concealment. They asked the vendor to step aside. His hesitation lasted less than a second, but it was just enough. Coleman noticed, pop the bottom compartment, please. I don't have the key, the man replied. That's odd, Coleman said. Those carts are city leased. Keys stay with the assigned vendor. I'm just helping out, he repeated. But his face was pale now, sweating. Hands tucked behind his back. Rex stood again, low growl building from his chest. Then came the full bark, so loud the couple nearest the plaza turned to look. The man made a move, sudden, backward, not toward Mason or Coleman, but toward the cart handle, like he meant to push it. Coleman stepped in fast and grabbed his wrist. Mason took the other arm. The man didn't struggle much, but he did mutter something under his breath. Not yet. Not what? Mason wondered. Not ready? Not time? The words stuck. The base compartment took minutes to force open. Inside was a steel container, cold, lined with foam, and in the center, a dense black cube. No markings, no switches, but wires at the base feeding into a dormant battery. The cube was wrapped in protective casing and tucked beside a second item, a folded cloth pouch. Inside the pouch were 3 laminated cards. 2 were blank access badges. The third held a name, Detective Glenn Pierce, from a precinct 30 miles north. But Glenn Pierce had died 6 months ago. Line of duty. Confirmed. So why was his badge in a cart outside a cinema? And why was Rex, the most disciplined dog on the force, still circling the cart as if it had more to say? The item was handed to a hazmat unit. No explosives, no radiation, but the tech division later confirmed something more concerning. The cube was a signal repeater, encrypted, set to transmit on a very specific frequency, one not used by commercial devices. It matched a protocol used by government-issued evidence logging tools, but it was operating without authentication. The purpose? Spoofing. It had been designed to mimic active police equipment, used to log or alter evidence records remotely, to create ghost entries, erase audit trails. But this one wasn't on. Not yet. Had the vendor triggered it, it would have gone active, gone live, and its first target would have been the nearest signal station 2 blocks away, the same one that handles local courthouse uploads, and the same one that had experienced an unexplained 3-minute outage 2 nights earlier. Over the next few hours, they ran backtraces on the signal's configuration. It wasn't the first. 4 other devices had been registered briefly across different city locations over the past 6 months. Each logged less than 5 minutes of activity, then silence. But this one was meant to be different. This one had been hidden in plain sight. It wasn't a warehouse drop or a deep system breach. It was a popcorn cart. Underneath butter and kernels, someone had concealed a black box system with the potential to rewrite digital records, and if Rex hadn't stopped, it would have worked. Later that evening, they finally reached Charlie, the real vendor. He wasn't home. His daughter had filed a missing persons report that morning, said he never came home the night before, left for work as usual, never returned. His phone was off. His cart license data had been accessed using his passcode, and his apartment had signs of forced entry, but no theft. Only his uniform was missing, the uniform the man had been wearing. Mason sat beside Rex on the station steps later that night, rubbing the shepherd's back gently. "You saw it," he whispered, "long before we did." And Rex just laid his head down on the officer's boot, silent and steady, because there was more to this than just one cart, more than one badge, and more than one name being used for something that shouldn't exist. And it all started because one dog wouldn't leave. By Saturday morning, what had looked like an isolated K9 alert had turned into something else entirely. Rex's refusal to move from the popcorn cart had led to the discovery of a signal device masked beneath movie snacks. But the real breakthrough came after the city's tech division decrypted the logs inside that black cube. It wasn't a transmitter. It was a listener. It had been scanning passively for nearby devices emitting specific RFID signatures. What kind of signatures? Badge IDs. Not just any. Active-duty law enforcement access tags. This device had been sniffing for law enforcement digital trails, badge logins, vehicle registrations, even radio traffic handshake signals, but only one specific kind, a cluster of badge IDs assigned to precincts across 3 districts. And all 3 had reported system hiccups in the last 60 days. What connected those events? No hardware failures, no cyber attacks, just temporary inconsistencies in evidence logs. The kind that looked like honest mistakes until they weren't. Detective Kepler Mark dug into Charlie's disappearance. Security footage from the plaza 3 nights before showed Charlie alive and well, arriving to set up his cart around 4:50 p.m. At 5:22, a man approached him. No obvious struggle, no sudden movement, just a long conversation. Charlie stepped away from the cart for just under 2 minutes. When he returned, he looked dazed, sluggish, and 20 minutes later, he left without the cart. That was the last time anyone saw him. An hour after that, the man in the hoodie arrived, the one Rex barked at, and the cart, it was already transmitting. Detectives began running serial numbers on the popcorn cart's rental chassis. It had been moved between 5 different vendors in the past year. Each cart shift lined up neatly with a nearby infrastructure hiccup. In a courthouse, evidence room, or district database center, the carts weren't serving snacks. They were being used as cover for devices, for access, for proximity. No one questions a food vendor outside a city building, but someone had been counting on that. one food cart per event, all outfitted with the same compartment, all transmitting when within 50 feet of a specific badge, and all of it masked beneath popcorn and caramel. Rex had sensed it. Not the popcorn, not the man, the network signature. Later that day, a new piece of footage surfaced. A traffic cam near 8th and Terrace showed the hooded man driving a white van, no plates. But what stood out wasn't the vehicle, it was the logo. Pop and Go Rentals, a local snack equipment leasing company. Problem was, Pop and Go had shut down a year ago. The LLC was dissolved, but its assets never auctioned, which meant someone had kept the carts, the uniforms, and the delivery route. Rex's bark didn't just stop an infiltration attempt. It interrupted a pattern, and now they needed to follow it. Fast. At 7:40 p.m. that night, a tip came in. A teenager on a bike near Bayside Park claimed he saw an off-brand popcorn cart parked by a municipal pump station. No movies there, no foot traffic, just an odd place to serve snacks. Kepler and Rex rolled out immediately. They arrived 12 minutes later, no vendor, just the cart. Parked beside the utility gate. Locked. Still warm. Rex jumped from the vehicle without waiting. He went straight for the cart. No hesitation, no sniffing. He sat, strongest alert. Mark opened the lower compartment. Inside was another cube, still active, but different this time. This one was running timed loops. It wasn't listening. It was sending. A signal looped every 15 minutes, encrypted, broadcasting from one city-owned structure to another. They brought in a mobile decryption team. The signal, a short binary burst, low frequency, repeating over and over with a checksum tail. When decoded, it revealed a 6-character string, RPV45K. At first, it meant nothing, until someone in municipal IT flagged it. That was the alias for a secure relay point, tucked inside the city's emergency server protocol, activated only during disasters when systems went offline. It wasn't supposed to be in use. It had been deactivated for testing 6 months ago, but someone had turned it back on to hide a side channel, and someone had been walking signal repeaters across the city, using snack carts to physically activate the range. Rex's bark hadn't just stopped one attempt. It had broken a stealth network, and now the question was, what had they already sent? Buried inside the second cart's cube was a device health log, internal diagnostics showing boot times, battery levels, and command confirmations. One entry stood out. Command confirmed. PKT upload auth slap batch 88C 7 IDs. 7 ID batches had already been transmitted, each with the label override prep roll align. Badge numbers, handler logs, personnel titles. They weren't spoofing records anymore, they were rewriting identities piece by piece, invisibly, quietly. But all of them had one error in the sequence. Each log showed the same disruption marker during the previous tests. K9 proximity conflict, alert, device halted. Every time a K9 was near, the device logged a fault. Every time until now. And yet Rex had still detected it. Not because of training, not because of programming, because dogs were never supposed to be part of the system, which made them the only thing that couldn't be rewritten. By sunrise, the entire department was on alert. What began with a police K9 barking at a popcorn cart had unveiled an elaborate scheme of mobile relay devices, badge ID cloning, and identity manipulation hidden in plain sight. But something deeper had slipped through. The second relay device found in the cart near Bayside Park had uploaded 7 override batches, meaning the network wasn't just planning a breach. It had already begun replacing select officers digitally. 7 identities across 7 precincts, and the cart had just been a small part of the system. Rex hadn't barked early. He had barked late. They were already inside. Cyber forensics focused on a strange phrase pulled from the device's log, Batch 88C. Most of the team believed it to be a simple data label, perhaps a batch of stolen badge IDs, but an analyst flagged it as something else. 88C was a call code buried in the city's legacy personnel registry, a designation used nearly a decade ago for officers flagged for reassignment or deactivation. It wasn't a personnel number, it was a list of officers scheduled to be replaced. And every one of the 7 names listed under Batch 88C had something in common. They were handlers in active K-9 programs. That's why the signals had failed. That's why the transmitters had been faulty, and that's why Rex was in their way. They weren't trying to go around him, they were trying to remove dogs like him altogether. At 2:14 p.m. that afternoon, an alert came from a precinct in Midtown. An officer in full uniform had attempted to log in with a valid badge, but his biometric scan didn't match the stored record. He left calmly before anyone could stop him, but on his jacket, a small fray in the shoulder patch, same as the fake uniform found weeks earlier in a department raid across the state. It was happening again, and this time the handlers themselves were being shadowed. That same evening, Officer Reyes, the K-9 handler who had first partnered with Rex, reported an attempted break-in at her apartment. Nothing was taken, but her spare badge was missing, and the only clue left behind, a printout tucked under her doormat. It read, "Phase 4 Handler Substitution Begins." The team revisited the original cart's vendor cart and dug deeper into what Charlie may have known. Hidden inside the leg of the cart was a burnt notebook sealed in plastic. It held torn sketches, names, badge numbers, grid maps of movie theater schedules, and one full phrase that was still legible. Phase 3 disrupted. X units compromised. Delay not tolerable. Deploy fallback. X units were K-9 units. The implication was clear. Handlers and dogs were being monitored as variables to be eliminated, not for violence, not for vengeance, but because their instincts interfered with the network's system timings. And fallback likely meant escalation. The last page of the notebook had 3 dates. One of them, tonight. Mark and Rex tracked the last known signal pings from the second relay device. They led to an abandoned mini-storage facility just outside city limits. Unit 214 had been leased under a fake name just 6 weeks earlier. Inside, they found it stripped almost bare, except for one thing. A rolling tray cart identical to the one used for popcorn, except this one held no snacks. It held evidence bags, each one labeled with real precinct case numbers, all current, all tied to K-9 alerts logged in the last 3 months. Each file had a red stamp, pending transfer, identity alignment incomplete. That was the link. The network wasn't trying to just access officer systems. They were trying to mimic every part of the investigative process, including planted evidence to discredit the original handlers. If Rex hadn't barked, these cases would have gone quiet. These files would have been corrected, and no one would have known. At 11:08 p.m., a final ping was logged by a forensic monitoring server. A skimmer device had just been reactivated briefly. Location? Eastwood Stadium Theater. Same complex where it all began. Except this time, the cart wasn't outside, it was inside, right behind the concession counter. Rex was already barking before the cruiser even stopped. When officers entered, they found the cart abandoned behind the popcorn warmer. The staff had no idea it wasn't one of theirs. Inside the base, a final relay cube set on a countdown. When the techs cracked the casing, they found a looped data transmission schedule. A final round of badge IDs was queued to overwrite 5 handler profiles before morning, and the target list, Rex's current unit. The final relay cube was reverse engineered. It had been designed to erase field-generated alerts from active K-9 logs, making it appear as if dogs like Rex never alerted, never barked, and never found anything at all. Had it gone active, the department's K-9 records would have appeared faulty, which would justify deactivating the unit, which would allow the remaining handlers to be phased out quietly. But it didn't activate because Rex barked before the countdown ended, before it was triggered, and now the system was exposed. 2 months later, the task force had uncovered 14 other vendor nodes disguised as carts, vans, or kiosks, each one linked to a broader identity spoofing network working to replicate law enforcement patterns undetected. But none of them had accounted for one thing: a dog who wouldn't ignore what others missed. Rex didn't stop because of training. He didn't pause because someone told him to. He barked because something felt off, and that bark led to the unraveling of a network that had operated in shadows for almost a year. His record was updated with a single line: Rex Thorax K9AX214. Involuntary disruption asset. Incident prevention beyond protocol. No medal. No award. But to the officers who saw what he'd uncovered, he was the only reason they still had their names. And now, every time he passed a food cart, Rex sniffed twice, because he remembered. And so did everyone else. Can you believe one bark stopped all of that? If this story had you on edge like it did us, don't scroll away just yet. Hit that subscribe button, give the video a like, and drop your favorite dog's age in comments, because what's coming next might just top this one.